She said it like a casual thing. Light, easy, but the way her eyes lingered after made the room feel smaller. "You should visit more often," she said. And then she smiled, soft and careful, like she already knew I would. It had been years since I'd seen her. Mrs. Vale, Elena, now that I was supposed to be an adult, still carried that same unhurried grace. Nothing in her moved without intention. Her voice, her gestures, even the way she pushed a loose strand of hair behind her ear felt deliberate. She had that kind of quiet that didn't ask for attention but took it anyway. I was just there to drop off something for her son, my old friend, who wasn't home. She opened the door, sunlight sliding across her bare shoulders, and for a second, I forgot what I was holding. It was just a book, nothing important, but her eyes, warm, steady, made it hard to remember anything that was. She invited me in. The air inside smelled faintly of coffee and linen. Something baking, maybe. It was familiar but different now. Less like home, more like something I shouldn't want to stay in. We sat at the kitchen table, across from each other, and time stretched thin between us. "Still taking pictures?" she asked. "Trying to," I said. "Mostly people. Faces." She tilted her head. "You always noticed more than most." I wasn't sure what she meant, but she said it like it was both a compliment and a warning. Her laugh came low, more breath than sound, and it did something strange to my chest. I caught myself watching her hands, how they rested on the table, fingers slightly curled, thumb brushing the edge of her cup. She had rings now, none that looked new. She asked about my work, my apartment, my plans. I asked about her, though I wasn't sure what I really wanted to know. The pauses between our sentences felt more honest than the words themselves. When she reached across to refill my cup, her fingers brushed mine. Not an accident, not entirely. It wasn't long, just long enough to notice. Her skin was warm, softer than I remembered. She didn't pull away first. Outside, wind pressed against the kitchen window. The clock above the stove ticked louder than it should have. She leaned back, crossing one leg over the other, and smiled in that way that didn't need sound. "You've grown up," she said finally. It wasn't teasing. It was something else, almost regret. I wanted to say something back, something clever or easy, but my throat felt tight, so I just nodded, pretending to look at the mug in my hand. She watched me for a moment longer than she should have. "Your friend's out until late," she said quietly. "You can stay a bit if you'd like." I should have said I had somewhere to be. I didn't. I said sure, and tried not to sound too quick. The afternoon light shifted, turning gold, then dim. She moved around the kitchen, slow, unhurried, as if every motion carried its own memory. I found myself studying the curve of her back, the faint crease at her shoulder when she reached for something high. Every small thing became impossible to ignore. When she turned, her eyes caught mine again. The kind of look that doesn't happen by chance. She hesitated just a second, long enough to feel like a choice, and then took a step closer. The space between us disappeared by inches. The smell of her perfume, faint, citrus and cedar, filled the air. She opened her mouth like she might say something, but instead, a door creaked open down the hall. She froze. The spell broke, but only just. Her hand was still close enough that I could feel the warmth of it lingering in the air. And then she whispered, low enough for only me to hear, "Don't look." After that afternoon, I told myself I wouldn't go back. I even deleted her number from my phone, though she'd only texted once. A polite thank you for bringing the book. But the truth is, I started finding excuses before I even realized it. A camera battery I'd forgotten. A photo I thought she might like. She never said no. She never had to. The next time I saw her, the house felt quieter, like it was holding its breath. She was in the garden, gloves on, kneeling near a row of fading lavender. Her hair was tied back, loose strands clinging to her neck in the heat. When she saw me, her smile came slow, unsure at first, then real. "I was wondering if you'd stopped visiting," she said, standing and brushing dirt from her knees. "I wasn't sure if I should." "You're here now." It wasn't an answer, but neither of us seemed to need one. Inside, she poured lemonade, her movements careful. The air between us carried something that felt both new and familiar, like a song I'd almost forgotten the lyrics to. She asked about my photos again. I showed her a few portraits, street shots, light and shadow. She leaned close to see, shoulder brushing mine. Her scent, something warm, like sandalwood, reached me before her voice did. "You always look at people like they're secrets you want to keep," she said. I didn't mean to, but I looked right at her then. "Some secrets are worth keeping." She laughed, quiet, but it faded quickly. There was a sadness in her eyes that didn't belong to the moment. "Careful," she said, softer now. "You're too young to sound like that." That was the first time I saw it, the faint ring mark on her finger. She caught me noticing. "Divorced," she said before I could look away. "A long time ago." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "You learn to live with silence." I wanted to ask what she meant, but she turned toward the window, watching wind move through the garden. The silence between us grew again, different this time, heavier. She reached past me to grab her glass, her hand grazing my arm. Not a full touch, just enough to feel the heat of her skin through the thin fabric. Neither of us moved. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely there. "You shouldn't come here so often," she said. "I know," but she didn't sound like she wanted me to agree, and I didn't. We stood there, too close, pretending not to notice. The ticking clock, the faint hum of the refrigerator, the pulse in my wrist, all too loud. Then she stepped back, breaking the moment with a small, steady breath. "Your friend's coming home this weekend," she said, as if that explained everything. "Right?" I nodded, but neither of us moved. As I turned to leave, she reached out, just lightly, and straightened the collar of my shirt. Her fingers lingered a beat too long. "You always forget the small things," she said. And then she smiled, not the practiced one, but the kind that said, "Don't make this harder." I left before I could. At the door, I felt her eyes on me, not following, just staying. That was the moment I realized. Leaving didn't mean distance anymore. It was supposed to be a quick stop. Just to drop off a memory card she'd asked to borrow. A small favor, nothing that should have made my hands shake on the steering wheel. She opened the door before I could knock twice. "Noah," she said, my name soft, like she hadn't used it aloud in a while. The house was dim this time, curtains half drawn. A faint hum from the dishwasher in the kitchen. She wore a loose sweater that slipped a little off one shoulder, unintentional or maybe not. "You can set it on the table," she said, stepping aside. But when I did, she didn't move away. There was too little space between us. Her perfume, cedar and something faintly sweet, pulled at every quiet thing I'd been trying to ignore. "I wasn't sure if you'd actually come," she said. "I wasn't sure if I should." A half smile. "We keep saying that." For a moment, neither of us spoke. The air felt charged, like a storm about to break. Then her phone buzzed on the counter, a message lighting the screen. Her son's name. Her breath caught. She looked at it, then back at me. "He's coming by in a few minutes," she said, voice thinner now. "Just to grab something." "Then I should—" "Wait," she said quickly before I could finish. Her hand landed on my wrist. Light. Instinctive. The kind of touch that asks for a second before the world returns. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was thick, trembling between us. "You shouldn't be here when he comes," she whispered. "I know." "Then why?" "I don't know." The honesty hung there, too real to take back. Her thumb brushed once across my pulse. Maybe without meaning to. She drew a slow breath, stepped closer. I could feel the warmth from her, see the faint rise and fall of her chest. "Noah," she said, but the rest didn't come. The front gate creaked outside. Footsteps. We both froze. She moved first, pulling her hand back, adjusting her sweater like she could erase the moment from the air. "You should go out the back," she said, voice steady but not calm. I hesitated, just a heartbeat too long. Her eyes flicked to mine again, pleading and warning all at once. And then softer, "Please." I nodded. But before turning, I reached for the table, the memory card still there. Our fingers brushed, only for an instant, but the shock of it stayed. I slipped out the kitchen door, into the narrow strip of garden. Through the window, I saw her son step inside, tall, careless, calling out something from the hallway. Elena smiled, the practiced, motherly one. But her hands, I noticed, were trembling slightly as she poured water into a glass. I waited by the side gate until his voice faded. She glanced once toward the window, not at me, but enough that I knew she felt me there. That look, brief, quiet, unguarded, said everything we hadn't let ourselves say. And that night, for the first time, I realized we'd already crossed something. Not a line drawn in rules, but the kind that changes what silence means. Rain came without warning. A gray, restless evening that pressed against the windows and filled every silence. I hadn't planned to see her that night. I told myself I wouldn't. But when she texted, "Could you stop by? The lights keep flickering." I was already halfway out the door before thinking twice. When I arrived, the storm was louder than anything she said. The house was darker, lit only by a lamp near the couch. She stood by the window, her reflection fractured by the glass. "I didn't expect you to come so fast," she said, almost smiling. "I was close by." That wasn't true. She knew it too. The flickering light above us stuttered, then steadied. "Guess it fixed itself," she murmured. We both knew why I'd stayed. She crossed her arms, the thin fabric of her shirt catching the lamplight. Her bare feet made no sound on the floor as she turned toward me. "This is getting complicated." I nodded. "I know. People talk, Noah. They always do. I don't care." She gave a small, disbelieving laugh. "You should." The distance between us felt smaller with every word. The sound of the rain, her breath, the faint hum of the lamp. All of it folded together until nothing else seemed real. "I can't keep pretending this isn't." I stopped. Her eyes met mine. "Isn't what?" I couldn't find the word. The air between us felt charged, trembling. She took a slow step forward, close enough that I could see the drops of rain caught in her hair. I lifted a hand before I thought about it, brushed a strand away from her cheek. My fingertips grazed her skin, warm and impossibly soft. She didn't move away. Instead, she closed her eyes, just for a heartbeat, then opened them again, the kind of look that makes time hesitate. "This isn't fair," she said quietly. "You're supposed to have beginnings. I've already had mine. Maybe I just want to know you now," I said. "Not who you were." Her lips parted. A breath, not a word, and she leaned in slightly, enough that her voice brushed my skin when she whispered, "You shouldn't say things like that." "I mean them." Something in her broke then. Not loudly, just a tremor in her restraint. She reached up, her hand on my chest, as if testing how real I was. My heart betrayed me. Fast, reckless, too loud to hide. We were inches apart. Her fingers tightened on my shirt. I felt the heat of her through it. The thunder cracked outside, shaking the room. Neither of us moved. Then she whispered, "If you touch me, we can't go back." I swallowed hard, searching her eyes. "Maybe I don't want to." For a second, the world stilled, the kind of stillness that comes before something irreversible. Her breath hitched. She leaned closer, close enough that I could feel it against my mouth, the air between us trembling. And then, a sharp knock at the door. She froze. We didn't move, didn't breathe. The knock came again, louder this time. Her hands slipped from my chest, lingering as she whispered, barely audible, "Don't say anything." The rain hadn't stopped, poured steady, washing the night clean or trying to. The knock at the door still echoed somewhere in my chest. She moved first, slow, deliberate. Her hand smoothed the front of her shirt, her breath trying to find rhythm again. I stepped back, just enough to make it look like nothing had happened, even though everything had. She opened the door. Her son stood there. "Hey, Mom," he said, shaking the water from his hair. "Didn't think you'd still be up." Her voice came out steady. "The lights went out for a bit." He nodded, then spotted me by the couch. "Oh, hey, man. Didn't expect to see you here." His tone was easy, but his eyes lingered too long. He noticed the 2 glasses on the table, the faint smell of rain and perfume, the quiet. "Your mom said the power flickered," I said quickly. "I just came to check the fuse box." He looked at me, then at her. "You're still fixing things around here, huh?" Something in her jaw tightened, just barely. "I appreciate the help," she said, too quickly. He went to the kitchen, talking about the drive, about someone he'd seen downtown. But every word seemed to move around the silence that hung between us. She stayed near the doorway, her fingers gripping the edge of the counter. I could feel it, the shift. What had been ours, quiet and secret, now felt fragile, exposed. When he finally went upstairs, the sound of his footsteps fading, the air deflated, but not safely. Elena turned toward me. Her voice dropped low. "This can't keep happening. I didn't plan." "I know." She cut me off, eyes sharp now, almost angry. "But he's starting to notice. People will notice." I took a step closer. "You're scared. You think I shouldn't be?" Her breath came shallow. She rubbed a hand over her face, and when she looked up again, her eyes glistened in the low light. "You don't know what this would cost me. Then tell me to stop coming." Her lips parted. No sound came. I moved closer, not touching, but close enough that she could feel it. "Tell me," I said quietly. She didn't. Instead, she whispered, almost broken, "I lied to you." I froze. "About what?" She hesitated, her fingers twisting the edge of her sleeve. "That day at the table," she said, "when I told you I hadn't seen anyone since the divorce." Her voice cracked. "There was someone. Briefly. It ended badly. He was younger, too." The confession landed heavy. Not betrayal, but fear made visible. "I told myself I'd never do that again," she said. "Never feel that foolish again." I stepped forward, close enough that her voice trembled against my chest. "You think this is the same?" She shook her head, eyes glassy. "No. That's what terrifies me." For a long moment we just stood there, her hand at her side, mine hovering near it, both too aware to move. Finally, she whispered, "If I let you stay tonight, I'll stop pretending I don't want this." Outside, thunder rolled again, distant but coming closer. I didn't answer. I just took her hand, lightly, carefully, and waited to see if she'd pull away. She didn't. The storm had passed, but its echo lingered. The steady drip of water from the eaves, the faint electric smell left in the air. The house was quiet again, except for the sound of her breathing somewhere behind me. Elena stood by the window, arms crossed, staring at the reflection of her own outline against the glass. The light from the street slipped across her face, pale and soft. I could see the exhaustion in her shoulders, the kind that came from fighting something you already know you've lost. I took a step toward her. The floor creaked. She didn't turn. "You should go," she said quietly. "I know, but I didn't move." She sighed, shaking her head. "You keep saying that, because it keeps being true." Finally, she turned slowly, deliberately. Her eyes met mine, and all the careful distance we'd built over the weeks felt useless. There was nothing between us now but the air we both tried not to breathe too loud. "I don't want to hurt you," she said. "You won't." Her voice cracked. "You can't promise that." I stepped closer until I could feel the warmth coming off her skin. My hand hovered near her arm. Not touching, but close enough that every nerve in my body waited for her to move. "Elena," I whispered. Her name felt different when spoken softly like that, fragile, dangerous. She exhaled, her lips parting just slightly. "You should stop saying my name that way." "Why?" "Because I don't want to remember it like this." The honesty cut through the room. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then she reached up, brushing her fingers against my cheek, almost in disbelief, like she needed to confirm I was real. Her touch trembled. "You make me feel like I'm 20 again," she said, voice low. "And that's the problem." Her palm lingered against my jaw, thumb tracing the edge of my mouth before she pulled back, fighting herself. I caught her hand before she could step away. "You're not running," I said softly. She looked at me, And in that look, everything we'd avoided saying was there. The loneliness, the guilt, the wanting that had nowhere safe to go. Her next breath came uneven, shaky. She closed the distance between us until her forehead rested lightly against mine. I felt her whisper more than I heard it. "If we do this," I nodded, barely moving. "Then it's real." We stood like that, suspended, caught between fear and inevitability. Her fingers curled around mine, our breaths falling into the same rhythm. Then, just when it felt like the world would break if we didn't move, she lifted her head. Her lips hovered near mine, not touching, but close enough that the space between them pulsed with everything we hadn't said. And then she spoke, her voice trembling but clear. "Then stay." It wasn't surrender. It was a decision, quiet, final, human. I closed my eyes and let the last of the storm fade. Morning came quiet. The world outside still damp, the garden shining with leftover rain. Elena sat at the kitchen table, the same table where it all started. Sunlight tracing the edges of her hair, a mug of coffee untouched in her hands. She looked different somehow. Not younger, not softer, just more real. Like the part of her that had been hiding had finally stopped trying. I leaned against the counter, watching her. The air between us wasn't tense anymore. It just was. She looked up and caught me staring. "What?" she asked, half smiling. "Nothing. Doesn't look like nothing." I crossed the room and sat across from her. The smell of coffee, faint citrus, the echo of last night's thunder. All of it still hung in the quiet space between us. "I keep thinking I should feel guilty," she said after a while. "But I don't." "You shouldn't," I said. She gave a small, knowing laugh. "You're supposed to say I should. I've never been good at saying what I'm supposed to." That made her smile, the real one, the one she used to hide. For a long moment, neither of us said anything. She reached out, her fingers brushing mine on the table, slow and tentative, like a question that didn't need an answer. I turned my hand over, and she let her palm rest against mine. Our fingers fit in a way that felt quiet, right, like something inevitable. "I used to think love was something you outgrew," she said. "Something that belonged to younger years. Now I'm not so sure." I squeezed her hand gently. "Maybe it just changes shape." Her eyes met mine again, steady, searching. "You'll leave eventually," she said softly. "You're meant to. Maybe. But not today." She nodded, a single, slow motion, as if that was enough for now. When I stood, she followed me out to the porch. The garden glistened in the soft light, every leaf holding a drop of silver. She wrapped her arms around herself, but when I stepped closer, she let me pull her in. Her head rested against my chest, her hair still carrying that faint sandalwood scent. I kissed the top of her head, once, gently. She didn't move away. "This doesn't have to be complicated," I whispered. She smiled into my shirt. "It already is. Then we'll live with that." The breeze moved through the lavender, bending the stems without breaking them. The same sound that used to fill the silences between us now felt like part of the peace. When she looked up, her eyes weren't guarded anymore, just open. "Stay for breakfast?" she asked. I nodded. "Yeah, I think I should visit more often." She laughed, soft, honest. And this time, she didn't stop me when I brushed my thumb along her jaw. The distance between us, all the fear, the waiting, the rules had finally disappeared. And in its place, something simple remained. Two people seen. Did you enjoy the story? What kind of stories would you like to hear next?